Welcome, everybody, to Firehouse Talks with Jersey Rick, igniting leadership excellence. This is episode number 41 of season number 2. I'm Rick, and this is my co host, Emily.
Hi.
This is where we talk about anything and everything related to leadership, and you do not have to be a firefighter to listen to this podcast. And we know that there are people who are not firefighters. And the topic that we're going to be discussing today has wide reaching implications, regardless of your career. But we're going to be specifically talking about how it impacts the fire service. Our guest today is retired Fire Chief Arjuna George. Emily, you want to read the chief's bio, please?
Yeah, so Arjuna is a retired fire chief with 24 years of serving his hometown of Salt Spring Island, British Columbia, Canada. Arjuna experienced the beginning of burnout in mid 2020 and began a journey of better self care. Through his recovery, he found a new purpose in life by supporting others to live their best life through his coaching and teachings. His vast experience with first responders and how they respond and work under stress will be an asset to all first responders. He is also a certified tension trauma release exercise provider, certified executive coach, stress coach, and visualization and performance coach. He is the author of Burnt Around the Edges, a guide to mastering stress and survival burnout, and he is the host of the podcast Beneath the Helmet.
Yeah, Chief George, welcome to Firehouse Talks with Jersey Rick. So, Emily just read your bio, and for 24 years in the fire service and what you've done since then, that's a very short bio. Could you go ahead and fill in the blanks, those spaces in there, please?
For sure. Yeah, well, I think for my whole career, I always thought I was a firefighter or a fire chief. But really, I'm a human being first. And I think that's where we also skip a lot of that. We always say we're a firefighter or a fire chief. I'm a husband, I'm a partner. I am a father of two grown adults. Almost coming up to my 30th year anniversary this year,
Oh,
wedding
congratulations.
anniversary. So
That's cool.
yeah, so I think that is kind of that's who I am really. The fire chief was part of my life. That was a segment chapter of my life. I've always been interested in writing. Writing's always been a passion of mine. I've been writing for Firefighting Canada, Crackle Magazine, Canadian Firefighter for over a decade now, and some of those magazines, and some other smaller publications across North America. And really, just I've always found an interest in sharing. Honestly, it's kind of
Mm.
that teacher attitude that why hold it to yourself if you learn something, or maybe even think of something new that's not even necessarily out there yet, and kind of test the waters and innovate and play around with different things. So I've been writing a lot about that. As you said, Burnt Around the Edges. My first book, my second book is Leading the Charge, which was co-authored by Fire Chief Les Carpluck, who's also retired now. A firefighter's approach to resilient leadership. So that's our second book, and kind of just I'm gonna keep pumping out books. That's kind of definitely a passion of mine is writing. The podcasting has been a blast, and we're in season 3 now. And yeah,
Congratulations.
that's been a great opportunity to kind of connect with the fire service and far beyond the fire service. A lot of our guests have nothing to do with the fire service
Hmm.
Yeah.
except for the skills that they bring to the table, right? But they're not firefighters themselves per se. And then the coaching, yeah, in 2019, I was trying to figure out, I was starting to feel that burnout. And then 2020, it really hit. And I took a leave of absence in 2020 due to stress. And that's where I got coached myself, where I also realized that I want to write a book, that I really want to pivot my life, and I want to become a coach myself. So now my biggest, part of my life is coaching mostly fire service individuals, but also law enforcement, paramedics, and nurses across North America to lead their best self, to be that true person, that true selves, their authentic self, and thrive in their careers and their home life. So that's really what's bringing me a lot of joy these days, for sure.
No, that's great. Hey, Chief, we also put this up on my YouTube channel. Could you hold your book up again so those who watch this on the channel can see that leading the charge? Okay. And available through Amazon, I presume?
Exactly. Yeah. And the cool
Yep.
thing about this book is it was co-authored by the both of us, Les Carpluck and myself. But all the proceeds, 100% of the proceeds from Amazon go to the Canadian Fallen Firefighters Foundation.
Okay.
That's
So
All
the
right.
lovely.
whole book, everything that goes into it is all going to the Canadian Fallen Firefighters Foundation to support the families that lose loved ones in the line of duty.
Wow,
Okay.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
So you were the fire chief in the hometown that you grew up in. What was that like? Hmm.
Blessing and a curse. So a blessing for sure, because I live in a beautiful spot. I grew up here. I moved here when I was very, very young. So I consider myself born and raised. And this community it's on an island. They call it kind of the Hawaiian Islands of Canada. So
Mm-hmm.
the climate is very nice. I got palm trees, I got cactus outside growing year round. So it's a
Wow.
different Canada than you might expect maybe in Ontario or Toronto or that kind of thing. So I really didn't want to leave Salt Spring. I did for a while. I went to school in Victoria, but we came back, started a family 30 some odd years ago. And to be able to get into my own community as a volunteer firefighter, I thought was a privilege in itself to become just a volunteer.
Mm.
So in 1997, I joined as a volunteer, and 4 short years later, I became the first career firefighter in the
Mm.
department. So the department already had some career chiefs, but this was the first firefighter rank. And I moved up the ranks honestly very fast. Once again, a blessing and a curse that I went become a firefighter to a captain to a assistant chief, deputy chief, and to a fire chief. So I rapidly went through all those ranks in 24 years, barely getting a taste of each rank, kind of just getting used to it and then getting promoted to the next rank. So I
Wow.
see that as a blessing. That was an amazing opportunity that I got to see and talk to so many amazing people across the world due to my position there. But also growing up in a small town, like we're 13,000 people.
Mm.
So growing up in a small town, you know a lot of the people, you know a lot of the politics. When there is anything that's kind of touchy around budgets or unions or anything like that, yeah, sometimes the community can be a challenge to work within,
Mm.
right? So when you're
Huh.
in that small community, if you're in a bigger, city or something like that, essentially when you're off shift, probably nobody knows who you are, and really maybe doesn't care who you are per se.
Uh-huh.
But in a small town, yeah, that's a little different. You're on 24/7, which probably also led to my burnout as well. That I felt
Mm.
like I was on 24/7.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. I had no idea there were palm trees anyplace in Canada.
I know.
Oh yeah, yeah,
It's like,
yeah. I got palm
wow.
trees. I got outdoor cactus that just bloomed like mad this year, and
Wow.
it's thriving. I don't protect it or anything. It's just yeah.
Wow.
So
That
it
that
maybe snows once or twice a year here. That's about
Okay.
it.
eh,
I was gonna
Yeah,
ask that if you got snow.
huh. Now that's
very
amazing.
very
I
seldom.
I had an operational question pop into my mind is when you're explaining, the Salt Spring Island up there. What happened when you need mutual aid?
Yes, that was always the biggest concern I had. There is no mutual aid essentially. There is mutual aid, but it's maybe 6, 12, 24 hours from when you
Wow.
have the incident. So an active structure fire, you're not seeing anyone for hours and hours and hours, probably more for mop up or if
Mm.
it escapes into brush or anything like that. But really it was up to us. So that's where we also had to struggle politically of, why does an island of 13,000 need 3 fire stations? Why does it need career staff? Why
Mm.
does it need the volume of volunteer firefighters? Because we're all alone. And locals, it's education, right? They don't understand why that's required, why that's needed. Because any other town, any other city, you can call on 4, 5, 6, 10 other departments to come help
Yeah.
you, and you don't necessarily need all those resources in your town because you can draw on those other ones. So for
Mm.
us, that was a bit of a political kind of struggle over the last couple of decades, honestly, of
Mm.
why you need 3 stations, why you need 11 fire trucks, why you need this. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's
Yeah,
a
that's
tricky one.
interesting.
It's a tricky one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
reminded me of Ocracoke Island out in the Outer Banks of North Carolina. And we visited there, several times. And you're only going to get there by ferry, a
Mhm.
small airport, so airplane, helicopter, a boat, or you got to swim out there.
Nearly
And it
impossible.
really struck me, it was last year we were out at Ocracoke. and they were out training, and I thought, these
Mm.
guys are all by themselves out here, and if they get anything big and the wind's blowing through that small coastal town, uh, yeah, they're in a hurt locker, and so it's a
100%.
very unique situation that you were in, and one that I think many times that we in the mainland fire service can completely totally disregard because, like you said, hey, mutual aid, automatic aid, it it's here. But you know, that's very interesting. So yeah.
Yeah.
The best mutual aid we had was forestry,
Mm,
BC Forestry, which is a provincial, like a statewide forestry agency.
okay.
And they're minutes away by airplane, by helicopter. Though that was the quickest response we had for mutual aid. But if we were fighting a structure fire, yeah, it could be hours,
Mm,
hours and hours before any help.
yeah.
Wow.
Okay. Yeah. Interesting.
That's amazing. I do was
Mhm.
wondering, did you always want to be a fireman, or like what was your passion behind that?
Good question. No, I had zero desire in it when I was growing up. I actually didn't even know like any firefighters growing up. I didn't. My family wasn't involved in it. I didn't really know anyone that was involved in it. I actually wanted to become a chef. That was my go-to. That's
Mm.
what I wanted to do. And
Wow.
uh, lo and behold, fire service loves cooks as well, so that
Yep.
worked out well. Uh, but yeah, that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to own my own restaurant, actually own my own retreat,
Hmm.
and be like an executive chef for that retreat. But a friend of mine, actually a relative who had joined as a volunteer a couple years before me, kept kind of hounding me. But I had very young kids. I had 1 year old, and my wife was pregnant, and I was like, no, it's not the right time yet. But I think about 2 years into it, I finally said, "All right, I'll join as a volunteer," because he was just raving about how the community,
Mm.
the brother sisterhood, the training, the life skills you learn. I was like, "Sounds pretty fun. I'll give it a shot." And yeah, I got the fire bug pretty
Yeah.
fast, pretty fast.
Wow. That's
Yeah,
amazing. So did you
yeah.
like go to like not it's not called pastry school, it's the chef school version called culinary school.
Culinary school. I did a little bit of that. Honestly, I was kind of self-taught. I worked at a lot of restaurants, but I did go to baking school. So I was actually working at a grocery store as a baker prior to in my like 18, 19, 20-year-old self. So I
Wow.
thought that was going to be the avenue maybe to get into that as well. So,
Yeah.
Mm. Well, that's an
and
interesting
ironically,
background.
That is.
yeah,
Yeah.
I,
Yeah.
I
Dude.
ironically, I'm starting my sourdough journey as of today.
Oh, all right. Yeah.
Good luck
I
with
missed the
that.
2020 COVID sourdough trend, so now I'm onto it now.
But it's good because you know how many people out there look at firefighters as nothing more than a bunch of knuckle dragging hose jockeys.
Exactly. Yeah.
Your cooking
Oh
skills probably
yes.
came in handy.
Yep.
They probably liked your
100%.
meals.
Yes.
All right.
I
Well,
love cooking for sure.
that's awesome.
Yep.
So we do want to ask you, like, what is your definition of leadership?
Mm, very, very broad. Well, I think leadership, in my view, has two kind of sides to it. I've always considered leadership as providing people information, skills, knowledge, freedom, giving them the power to be the best selves of
Mhm.
Mm,
themselves.
love that.
And provide them the information, the guidance, the mentorship, the coaching, allowing them to follow but also become leaders themselves. But in the last couple of years, I've kind of found a new word that I really think is probably the most important, and that's self leadership.
Mm.
And I
Mm,
think we don't talk enough about self leadership, leading yourself first. We always talk about leading others. And I think that is kind of where I'm really passionate about in my career right now is helping people lead themselves first so they can
mm,
be even a better leader to other in any organization. Doesn't have to be the fire service. Lead themselves in their families, lead themselves in their relationships. I think that's a missing part. And you go to any school, maybe a little bit touched on self leadership, but it's definitely not a large portion of any
Mm.
education that's out there that I've seen, anyways.
yeah.
So that was definitely a big component of both of these books was self-leadership and starting to figure out how to lead yourself so you can show up as your best person. So you have the capacity to listen. So you have the capacity to be empathetic and compassionate. If you're not leading yourself, you're probably gonna have a hard time listening,
Right.
actually
Mm,
actively listening. You're gonna have a hard time being present with anyone because your capacity is so tanked. You're going to have a hard time just relating and being compassionate and empathetic towards your firefighters or your public or your family, right?
Mm, yeah. Yeah. Earlier this year, you had me on your podcast, Beneath the
Sure did.
Helmet, and we
Yes.
talked a lot about leadership. And one topic came up that I want to ask you about this. There's a number of issues facing the fire service today. What do you see as one of the major gaps in leadership in the fire service?
Hmm. Well, I think the biggest gap that I could see in the fire service right now is, well, essentially, I think the future of leadership in the fire service is at a tipping point.
Mm,
There's so much, there's so little drawing people to become leaders in the fire service now. Uh, if you talk about money, money's definitely not there compared to the overtime and other things that maybe
mm,
a firefighter would get. So that money that used to be a larger spread. Now, to be a firefighter and a fire chief, the spread is not that drastic.
hmm
And the political drama, the political BS is what I call it, is a challenge, right, for a lot of people to maneuver through in the next 5-10 years of their career. So there's not a lot of incentive that I'm seeing. So I think we need to look at that incentive to and my kind of worry is that we're just going to see people with massive egos join those ranks
Oh,
and not the best people for the jobs.
Mm.
yeah. Yeah. I
Sounds kind
do.
of rough. It sounds kind of rough, but
Mm,
that's my gut feeling is it's going to be ego driven. Uh, I just want the stripes. I want the white helmet. And that is why I'm going for this position versus the people that really truly care for their firefighters, truly care for their communities, and want to be there for the right reasons.
yeah.
Yeah. Mm.
Well, the financial aspect of it, I remember when I first got promoted to battalion chief, the first 2, maybe 3, even up to 4 years, we had lieutenants that were making more money than us as battalion chiefs because of the overtime issue. And at that point, well, we never did get overtime. We had an ops chief and an interim fire chief work it out to where us battalion chiefs would get straight pay if we came in and backfilled a shift or for emergency recalls. But I love being a battalion chief. But then when you stop and you look at it, it's like we got guys that are riding the rigs that are making more money than those of us who have got responsibility for the entire shift. And that becomes a demotivator for people. Why should I get promoted? It,
No.
type of a
It's,
thing.
it's it's not all
So,
about the money, but that definitely is a part of it, right? It's not
yeah.
all about the money. Because then you look at the volunteer service and volunteer firefighters across North America is the largest contingency, right? We
hmm
have way more volunteer firefighters than anything. And
Mm.
those volunteer fire chiefs are trying to do all this on the side of their desk while they're working somewhere else.
Yeah.
And that is outstanding. I don't know how there's still truly volunteer fire chiefs out there that are functioning, that are not struggling because that is an ordeal. I kudos to them. Kudos to them for sure.
Yeah.
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 And I was going to mention this earlier, but for the folks that are listening, both Chief George and myself were retired from the actual job, but we are not retired from the fire service because of what the work type of work that both of us are doing. And that's not an uncommon thing. You've had guests on your show that have retired from the job, but they're not retired from the fire service itself. So do you have any recommendations, Chief, on how people who are currently in the fire service can navigate some of these challenges? Is it a mindset issue, or what's your thoughts on that?
Well, my thought would be go back to that self leadership again. I'm thinking a lot of, especially the chief ranks, if they're struggling trying to lead their organizations because of all these roadblocks that are in their way, politically, unions, volunteers,
Mm.
whatever that looks like. If they start leading themselves better, they're gonna have more capacity to actually show up and take on those tough days. Because
Mm,
if you're low capacity, you're not leading yourself well, and you have a big challenging event at your organization, maybe some toxic culture, maybe some bullying, harassment, whatever that looks like, it's going to be hard for you to truly work through that without killing yourself.
mm,
And so I think leading yourself first is going to allow those things to easier to to clean up, easier to manage, easier to actually negotiate and navigate that conflict in your organization, right? So once again, back to that leading self, I think that's the missing key, and I think that's where we really need to start concentrating on leading ourselves for sure.
Yeah.
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 Great.
So, what was one of your biggest leadership challenges that you faced as a fire chief?
Um, well, I've said the leader self leadership because I think that was one of those things that really tanked my career, honestly.
Mm.
But on the other side of things, I would say I was never truly prepared for that political arena that I got into. You know, I was hoping as a fire chief, my job would be to lead the organization, not necessarily be so bogged down in reports, admin, and working with, city council, or we had trustees,
Yeah.
where that was a constant battle. That was a constant struggle. And I was like, why did I sign up for this? I'm not quite sure why why I enjoy this part of the job anymore. And
Yeah.
that's why that burnout happened as well, because I wasn't enjoying my job anymore because I was not doing what really truly felt good to me was leading my organization, leading my firefighters. And when I spent more time working with politicians, I felt less and less connected to the organization. And that's
Mm.
where truly my heart was leading the firefighters and serving the community. But when I got bogged down so much in the politics as well as just the administrative load, like I was stuck behind a desk 12, 14 hours a day, and then came home and did more
Wow.
of it at the kitchen table. That was just not filling my bucket anymore, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was
Yeah.
probably my biggest leadership struggle, was not knowing that element of that role of that rank of a fire chief. I knew there was a part of it, obviously. When you're a figure like that, you are going to play a political role, but it seemed to take up 90% of my time, 90% of my energy, which really felt bad to me. I felt kind of not guilty, but a little disappointed that I couldn't lead the way I wanted to lead as an assistant chief or
Mm.
as deputy chief, or as a captain. Even I felt like I was leading more in those ranks than I did as a fire chief.
Hmm.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's interesting. I have
Yeah.
a friend here in Loveland. He retired from the Marine Corps as a lieutenant colonel, and he was a helicopter pilot. And he told me that his favorite rank was when he was a captain because of direct contact he had with the troops. That's very similar to what you are saying there.
Sure, for sure.
Oh,
And I didn't have an easy ride in the politics ride. There was a lot of arguing, a lot of turmoil, a lot of toxic. It wasn't a good place to be for 5 years, unfortunately.
Mm.
So if it was in a different environment, maybe it would have been a different conversation we're having right now. Who knows?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, for the folks that are listening, we're recording this in July. And Chief, you recently on your podcast, Beneath the Helmet, interviewed Dr. Terry Anderson. And a topic came up that you and I discussed earlier this year as well. And I would like you to address this with our listeners. And that is this thing called soft leadership skills.
Uh, yes, the word I hate the most. Because honestly, those soft skills such as communicating, listening, being
Mm.
empathetic, compassionate, in my opinion, those are the hardest skills to learn. And those skills that also a lot of people don't teach you. Like once again, going back into the fire school as a cadet, like a recruit, going into your fire officer programs, very, very little stuff is talked about. It's kind of fluffed over because, oh, that's stuff that you'll pick up on the road, or that's stuff that's not important even.
Mm.
And I truly think that, the operations, of course, very important. Knowing how to command a scene, very important.
Mm.
But if you really truly want to lead your organization, you have to master those hard skills, which we also know as the soft skills.
Mm.
And I truly think that is, once again, and it's kind of back to that self leadership once again, is
Mhm.
those soft skills, aka hard skills, is really where we need to focus some energy on, because that's where we're having the conflict, that's where we're having the disagreements, that's where we're having the miscommunications, that's where we're having the grievances. It's all because uh, we're not actually acting as humans to
Yeah.
each other. That's the biggest part. We're not acting like humans.
Yeah, interesting. You may have seen this. It came out, and first saw on LinkedIn a couple days ago, and then the same article showed up in the fire engineering news feed yesterday, written by a female firefighter paramedic. And I'm emphasizing the female aspect of this because she is talking about, and she's been on the job for quite a few years, the lack of humor anymore in the fire stations. And it's because of all the EEOC training that has taken place, and, just this constant fear in organizations that if somebody says something, there's going to be, an accusation that is thrown out there. And what she was talking about there is, how come things just can't be settled at the firehouse table, the kitchen table, like they used to be? And that comes back down to what you're saying, self-leadership. If I say something that ticks you off, we ought to be able to talk to each other about it rather than circumvent and run to HR and file a grievance.
You should also have the knowledge and kind of skill to not say things that you know are gonna tick some people off.
Yeah. Mm.
There's a lot of that's emotional intelligence, that's reading body language, that's reading people, that's listening, that's being compassionate. You're not gonna if you know all those soft skills, you're not gonna say something stupid where you're gonna offend somebody. You might say something funny, but it doesn't have to be offensive.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And your fire department was a combination fire department. And, down here in the States, recruiting and retention has been a problem on the career side and the volunteer side. And I hate to make an assumption, but I would imagine that was something you faced as well.
Yes and no. It was always a goal for recruitment and retention. And I like to actually spin it where it's retention and recruitment
Mm,
because really, yeah, you recruit them, that's important, but retaining them is the most critical
yeah.
thing. So if we actually switch that around to retain and recruit, we're going to have firefighters that last 5, 10 years, 15, 20 years as a volunteer or career. If we don't, we're going to have members turning over every 2, 3 years once they kind of hit that little peak of like, oh, I kind of know what I'm doing and I'm on to something different. So I think that's always been a struggle for all departments to retain and recruit. But what we found was good training, and I think good leadership, good culture also helped in that. But training, really, I truly think if you have a good training program, a good training officer, you're innovative. You're going to draw in so many people, and they're going to stay there. If you don't have good training, or you take training as a, uh, maybe we'll do it tomorrow, or maybe we'll do it next week, if you put a like, yeah, let's go training now, that's
Hmm.
where you're gonna have a department that's like, yeah, this is what I want to join. This is what I want to stay in.
Yeah.
Because people love training. They love training. They love the camaraderie of people when they're out there in the field, but also they get to put their skills to the test and actually try some new things that most human beings on Earth don't get a chance to try. Right. So
That,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
Were there different challenges leading the volunteer firefighters compared to the career firefighters?
I would say there's probably some differences for sure. Very similar. I think in my organization, a lot of our career members were also looked upon as volunteers because they all came through the ranks as volunteers and they
Mm,
helped out as much as they could when they're off duty as well. So they definitely, it wasn't a super segregated kind of division between the career and the volunteers, pretty close knit. And I think there's different motivators for the both of them, I think is probably the biggest thing. The training was the same, the rules were the same, the SOGs were the same. It was mostly the just kind of the motivating them of, maybe it's memorabilia that they get to have, awards, that kind of thing that
Mm,
kind of just sparked them. The amazing training. Like if once again, career members, they're going to train no matter what because that's their job. But if
yeah.
you have a training program that's lacking, you're probably going to have volunteers go, well, that's not very fun. I'm not going to
yeah.
waste my Tuesday night 3 hours of my life to go there and wash. Like when I first started on drill night, we'd go and wash out the storm drains for hose
Huh.
practice. I'm like, I don't know how I stuck through it for a couple years until things start to change, but that was our drill night. We'd go around town
Wow.
and spray out storm drains with our fire hose. I'm like, this is
Wow.
kind of
Wow.
ridiculous.
Wow.
Uh,
And I could imagine that firefighters in this day and age, if you did that, they would be gone next week.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I think
Yeah.
that's the biggest difference is the motivators between those two agencies. But in my agency, they were pretty much seen as the same.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah.
That's
Not
interesting.
only would they be gone next week, but the local director of the water department would be having a fit out here in the western part of the of our world, because of
Yes.
water
Oh, yes.
issues.
Yeah.
But well,
Yeah.
Chief, I want to switch gears here and want to talk about your book, Burnt, your first book, Burnt Around the Edges. Now, I do want to get your second book. And in the introduction of the book, you wrote, quote, as much as I love the fire service, it has also provided me with many unwanted side effects, which is why I am writing this book, unquote. Could you talk to our listeners about that statement?
I think the fire service has given me so much, and I'm forever grateful for the experience and everything like that. But for me, and this is not the same for every single person, but for me, I had struggles of maintaining the boundaries in my life. I turned fire into my life.
Mm-hmm.
Luckily, I didn't destroy my marriage. I didn't destroy my relationship with my kids or anything like that. Somehow that all stayed strong, which is awesome. But I had zero boundaries, and I had zero capacity to. I was a people pleaser, yeah,
Mm.
essentially. I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to make sure that all my firefighters were happy, that everyone in the community was getting what they needed, even if it meant taking away from my energy, my capacity, my time, my joy. Uh, that's I was, you know, leading others and not leading myself very well.
Yeah.
And I lost a lot of, I lost all my hobbies. So basically,
Mm-hmm.
my life just turned into fire, fire, fire. And that wrecked a lot of things in my body. It brought me to pre-diabetes, which is managed now, thankfully. It gave me arthritis in my 40s, which is
Mm.
bizarre, and that's just due to the overall, wear and tear, but also the cortisol and the stress in your body.
Yeah.
It wreaked havoc on my nervous system and essentially allowed me to start having vasovagal syncopes, where I would just faint. I don't
Mm.
know, for no reason, I would just pass out. And that happened 3 times in 2020, where I was like, all right, something is definitely wrong here. I need to take a break,
Yeah.
because my body was telling me I had to turn off. Like, it was forcing me to turn off because I wasn't doing it myself.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
And that kind of goes back to the boundaries, and boundaries are a huge thing. And a lot of people are like, oh yeah, boundaries, whatever.
Yeah.
But they're energy
Right.
sappers. And if you're not showing up as your best self, how are you going to be the best chief that you want to be? And
Mm-hmm.
that's
Yeah.
where I saw a lot of that happening myself, where I'm a high performer. I like to see things done in a certain way. Got high expectations. And what I didn't see that in myself in the last couple of years of my career, I was like, oh, this hurts. This hurts. Like, it actually hurt that I wasn't showing up as my best self. And I think that's kind of you know, what ended it all is just, I was showing up as somebody different that I didn't enjoy
Mm-hmm.
anymore, right? So I was getting
Mm.
frustrated, I was getting angry, but the anger, and I talk about in the book, was something that I actually held in. So when I say I got angry and frustrated, I did, but nobody knew about it. It was
Right.
completely
Mm.
all stuffed in, and that's an extremely toxic emotion to hold in.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Uh, and now I talk about emotions all the time, and I think a lot of people are actually embracing that. Where I was like, oh yeah, we're allowed to talk about emotions. Oh, that's pretty cool. Yeah,
Right.
I'm going to share about that, because
Yeah.
honestly, we all have emotions. Every single
Yeah.
Yeah.
person listening to this right now has an emotion, emotions, but we don't ever talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, why?
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
Doesn't have to be crying or all the time. That's doesn't. I think that's what people think about it when emotions is. Oh,
Yes.
I'm just going to
Mm-hmm.
start crying. No, there's
Yeah.
anger, there's frustration, there's disappointment, there's so many emotions out there, right?
Yeah.
And you have to sit in it and just be uncomfortable for a little bit to express your emotions.
100%. And firefighters are really good at ignoring, bottling it up, compartmentalizing, because that's
Yeah.
kind of what we're trained at. We're trained to, when we go to a call, we're trained to compartmentalize our emotions in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
But the missing component is that time somewhere along the line, you have to release that from your body,
Yeah.
Yeah.
release that from your mind. But
Yep.
most of us just keep ticking along because we go to another call, and then we go to another call, and then we have to go home and be a dad or a mom.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
there's that time and place where you need to process that 100%.
Yeah.
Mm.
And that's where that
Absolutely.
TRE came in for me.
Mm.
TRE was really what saved my life, was
Mm.
allowing that stress and trauma within my body to actually get shaken out. And so TRE is an amazing modality that saved my life and was so powerful that I actually became a certified provider for it to share it with the fire world more than anything, but really anyone who wants to learn how to use their own body to regulate their nervous system.
Hmm. That's
Yeah.
fascinating.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. So, can you tell our listeners about the difference between distress and eustress?
Well, eustress is the good stress. Distress is, well, any distress in your body is going to lead to disease, and that could be the cancers, the arthritises, any kind of thing in our body that's not healthy.
Yeah.
Eustress is that good stress that allows us to be a little bit motivated, a little bit, um, you know, on guard and aware of what's going on in our life. It gives us that little bit of boost.
Mm.
We want to have eustress, but we don't want to stay in any stress state for a long period of time.
Yeah.
We want to use that good stress, because stress is not all bad. We sometimes we think, oh, stress is bad. We want to have a stress-free life. No such thing as a stress-free life, and that's not actually healthy, because stress plays an important part. It allows us to flee from danger. It allows us to fight in danger. It allows us to be a little bit more aware of our surroundings. But if we're always in that state, that chronic stress state, that's where we're going to start having things like burnout, PTSD, all these other elements that wreak havoc on our nervous system, our mental health, our wellness in general. So,
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
There's a statement that you put down in chapter 1, which is titled Trial by Fire, that should serve as a cautionary note for everybody in emergency services, fire, police, EMS, and then also it should be a note for those who are listening that are not in the fire service to get an insight as to what actually takes place. And that is, quote, caring for others over our health can lead to complete soul exhaustion, end quote. Could you talk about that, Chief?
oh, I don't want to be a broken record, but back to that self leadership, that is essentially what it is, right? Is taking my energy. Like, I'm all for a servant leadership.
Mm-hmm.
I think that plays a part for sure. Sorry, excuse me. Um, Being a leader to others is super important, and I think in the fire service, that's what we're here for, is to lead others. But when we give our heart and soul to everyone else and not ourselves, we are an empty shell of who we used to be.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Yeah.
think that's where that self leadership comes into play, when you can start leading yourself, showing up vulnerable, showing up as your true authentic self. Like, I honestly think I am my true authentic self now. 10 years ago, it was a mask I was wearing, essentially, because I didn't feel, honestly, I didn't feel allowed, permitted to show my true self. I thought I had to show up as the textbook fire chief or the textbook fire officer or firefighter, and not kind of sway away from that whatsoever. I had to be that kind of stoic person. I had to be that leader that gave it all. My attitude back in the day was I had to be the first one there, the last one to leave all the time. I had to be at every training event.
Mm-hmm.
I had to be at every meeting. I had to be at every public event, just on and on. And that's just not sustainable for any human being,
Yeah.
to just give, and never kind of fill your bucket, right? And I think that's once again, that's the missing part, is taking care of yourself. And that's not selfish. And I think a lot of people think that, self leadership, oh, I'm just going to take care of myself and everyone else can figure it out on their own. No, no. The goal is for you to show up as your best self so you can lead the
Yeah.
best to your members.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yep. Yep. Mm.
Wow. So, another term that may not be familiar to our listeners is moral injury. So, can you
Mhm,
talk about that one and the impact it can have on people?
for sure. So moral injury is, it's actually, when I was writing my book, nobody was talking about moral injury. There's maybe one or two publications out there talking about it. Nothing for first responders that I saw, anyways. And now, which is very awesome. I'm starting to see it in magazines almost on a monthly basis. Somebody talking about moral injury, podcasts, people
Oh,
are talking about moral injury. So it's becoming more and more aware that this is a very prevalent mental health challenge that we're facing.
hmm,
So what moral injury is in my kind of how I would describe it is it was framed from the military where soldiers would go overseas and they would have to do things that they had no control over the final decision that went against their core values as a human being, who they stood for as a person. So that could be, obviously, when you're talking about soldiers, it could be things that are involving people that are not involved in the war whatsoever, and they have to get impacted somehow. And for that going against their core values as a human being, they come back to wherever their homeland is and they're like, man, that did not, I had to go and do this and it did not sit with me as a human being. It went against everything I stand for. And so we're seeing more and more of that in even the corporate world, but even in the first spawner world, we're seeing that as well. And some of the examples I use is we go to a house and we see a kid that's, maybe not getting the food or care that it needs. And you go there over and over and over again, and nothing's changing. That hurts your soul. And that's what they call it, an injury to the soul, because you're seeing
hmm,
this individual that you cannot have any, you don't have any control over fixing the problem. You can temporarily support them and then it's back into the system or something like that.
yeah,
So firefighters, you see that over and over again. Or in Canada and probably most of North America, the opioid crisis. We go to an overdose,
mm,
take them to the hospital. 5, 10 minutes later, 30 minutes later, they're back on the street, another
Mm.
overdose. Then you bring them to the hospital, and then it's just a repeat cycle. And as a firefighter, that emotional toll on us just it wears on you. It honestly wears on you, and it's a kind of an injury to the heart, essentially,
Mm.
and your spirit in general. So we're seeing more and more of that in the fire service, that moral injury component. And from the experts that I've talked to and how I feel, I think it's probably more prevalent than even PTSI or PTSD, only for the fact that it's an everyday thing. PTSD, trauma that we're seeing, yeah, it might be an everyday thing, but it might be a weekly thing, or it might be things that we have some tools to identify it, work through it, process it. But the moral injury, we just see and we kind of go on to the next call. We go on to
Mm.
the next call when we don't actually understand what we're seeing, that it's affecting our nervous system, our wellness, and our mental health. So, yeah, moral injury, if you want to know more about it, there's definitely a couple new books out there on it. But there's a lot of information on the internet about moral injury and how it can impact you. But I truly feel that it's probably more prevalent than the trauma that we're experiencing and seeing because it is so common. And for
yeah,
me, it wasn't seeing those kids or the overdoses. It was actually political moral injury. So I was going and witnessing conversations and things happening that totally went against who I am as a person. But I had no control over it. Even as the fire chief, I was witnessing people above me that I could not relate to how that was moving forward. And
Mm.
that was hurting me. Like I was like, oh man, I'm the fire chief. I'm representing this organization. But the things that I'm hearing and seeing don't resonate with me whatsoever. And that
Mhm.
that hurt me. And that really hurt for sure.
Yeah.
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 Well,
And I want to honor your time here. So I, as I mentioned before we started recording, got a lot of questions. Pardon me. But I do have one more question, and we'll stop this interview and then ask you to come back so we can dig more into your book. But what you're talking about there, and also related to moral injury, what I was thinking about when we talk about those frequent flyers is the frustration and the anger that pops up. It's like, are you kidding me again? We're sending a rig out to the same person again. And then, Joe Schmuckatelli, 3 blocks away, is in a cardiac arrest, and another rig has to come in and covers. So that ties into that. But the question that I have is you were in the fire service on the job for 24. I was on the job for 37, and that's a long time. And you've had other guests that have been on your podcast that have been in a long time, but wow, you had a statement in your book that really struck me and really made me stop and think. And that is, quote, that today's modern firefighter or emergency responder has a career shelf life, unquote. When I first came into the fire service, I never even gave any thought to a shelf life. Could you talk a little bit more about that as we wind down on this episode here?
For sure. And it's probably something hard for people to grasp that you do have a shelf life in the fire service. But I think the amount of trauma, like compared to 30, 40, 50, 60 years ago, the amount of trauma we're seeing on a day to day basis is 10x, 20x, a lot more.
Mm.
So we're seeing the volume of trauma in our nervous system, our wellness, huge amount. We're doing more with less. We're trying to do more with less, which is also adding stress to our plates. And that just the amount of call volume that we're experiencing is also leading to fatigue, compassion fatigue, uh, body breakdowns, like our knees and everything. Our backs are going quicker than they used to because we're going on so many more runs than we used to, and even before I started. So I think that really is the key. But what I feel is that just like the military, you do 20 years and you're out and you go and experience and enjoy the rest of your life. What I see is a lot of firefighters or fire chiefs keep hanging on, keep hanging on. One more
Mhm.
year, one more year. I just need another little bit in my pension, or I just want to I want to hit that 30-year mark on my get my pin. And but they're suffering and they're taken away from their life at that point.
Mhm.
Uh, and the detriment that they're using, the expense they're using is their wellness, their health, in lieu of a couple extra dollars in a pension or another pin for their tunic.
Mm.
And I think that's that mentality of once you join the fire service, you have to stay there until you retire out, either age or you get pushed out somehow by an injury or something like that. And my message now is kind of like if you join the fire service and it's your time to leave, it's okay to leave.
Mhm.
If it's your time to try something different, pivot in your life, go and explore a different hobby, a different career, do it. You're not stuck there. And that was kind of the message I was told is you join the fire service and that's essentially what I'm going to do until I age out or get injured or die. One of the three, right? So
Yeah.
Yeah.
and I just want people to understand that I think we do have a limit, and I think maybe around 20 years we've probably seen enough that we could probably pivot and have a whole nother career, a whole nother life, healthy, happy, while serving in our communities for the last 20 years. So
Mm.
that's pretty amazing that we can serve at that capacity for 20 plus years and then have a whole nother either retirement that's just doing whatever you want
Mhm.
or reinvent yourself and have a whole different career. And I just want people to know that's okay, that's essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And one of the other battalion chiefs would talk to me and he says, I know, Rick, you want to keep hanging on. He said, but what I don't want to see is you hang on so long that when you retire a year later, you're dead. And,
Mm.
I agreed. And I'm thinking of a police officer that we had here in our city, and he completely, totally identified with being a police officer and with that police department. And within, I think it was 2 years of him being retired, he died. And so, yeah, I certainly don't want to see that in anybody. And I join with you in those same thoughts. Well, folks, you've been listening to Arjuna George, husband, father, coach, author, and retired fire chief. Arjuna,
Love it.
it's been a pleasure to have you on. And I would love to have you back on because we want to dig deeper into your book. We definitely are going to be leaving people hanging at this point as to, hey, what's in your book? Hey, you should go out, folks, and buy the book.
Yeah.
But also, we want to talk more about the burnout aspect and, what steps people can take to recognize it and to circumvent that. But, folks, you'll have to hang on until next time. So, if you've liked this episode here, please like and subscribe. We'll have information in the show notes about Chief George's both books. My website address is in the show notes along with my email. You can also visit my weekly blog on my website, and it gets posted out on LinkedIn on Wednesday morning. So until next time, we'll see you later. Bye bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much.